Hello, Python programmers. This week we're working on conditionals, specifically the if, the else, and the if-else statements that allow our programs to run and do things. So I'm going to assume that you've done the initial exercise on pages 16 to 17 and that we're ready to move on from there. So the first thing we do is we open Python idle. Idle is the integrated development and learning environment, and you installed idle when you installed the Python programming tool. So we do our coding work and we test our work in Python idle. So we've got that open, and now let's open that first file that you created. So I'm going to do File and Open, and I'm going to navigate to a folder that I called My Python. It's a pretty good practice to create a folder and save all of your Python module files in that folder. So you can put it on your desktop or put it in My Documents, but here's my folder, and I'm going to double click to open up the robot file that I've already saved. Okay, let's make that a little bit bigger. So let's look at what we have so far. You know in Python that colors do mean something. And so we've got a function here with the word input, and another function that you're familiar with is the print function. You see that here as well. So what we're saying in this first line is that we're going to define user reply as the input that we get. And then we've told our end user what we want in the way of input. We've asked them to type either yes or no in response to the question, do you like robots? So yes will be an input and no will be an input. Then we have an if statement. So we've said if the user replies yes, and this double equal sign says that user reply must be equal to, exactly the same as yes. And then if that happens, if that condition is met, then the output from the computer should be to print beep, bop. Okay, so let's run this program and make sure that it actually works. So we click on Run and Run Module, and now we're met with the prompt, do you like robots? And let's type yes. All right, success. We got the beep bop. Now, if we want to run this again, we've actually got to close this window, and we can click on Run and Run Module. And let's try using no and see what happens. Okay, we don't get any response at all. So let's continue working with this module code and put some conditions into it. I'm going to close this window, and we're going to start working on a line that's going to begin with else. And so let's first press enter. And one of the things that your book cues you to do, and you may or may not have noticed, is that the else statement must start flush to the margin. So we need to use backspace and get our line all the way back so that it lines up with the if statement. So we can type in else and then press enter. This next line of code is going to tell the computer what to do if the end user types in no or anything else. And so we're going to place our cursor at the end of else and press enter. And we should be indented here. Your next line of code should look like this. Indent, print, well, robots don't like you either. Let's go ahead and save and run this to see if it'll work. Okay, this time we'll type no and see what happens. All right, success. Okay, so let's go ahead and close this window and continue working with the code. Where it's going to get exciting, because now we're going to work with the else if conditional statement. So in order to do that, we're going to need to add a couple of options. So we're going to go back to that opening line and type some other options besides yes or no. A revised line of code should look like this. Type yes, no, maybe, or only ones with laser eyes. And as always, make sure that you pay attention to the syntax of that line. So here's where things get exciting. We're going to add some else if statements so that we can fulfill some additional conditions in this module. Place your cursor at the end of the line with the first print function and give yourself a few empty lines. And then we're going to come back up and we're going to type a new line of code. So the next line, which tells the computer what to do if the user reply is maybe, should look like this. You'll press enter and you should see the indent. So we want the computer to respond, make up your mind, human, if we get a reply of maybe. So I'm going to go ahead and type in the remaining else if statements, and then we'll take a peek at that. Typed in 2 more else if statements. The first one, if the user reply is only ones with laser eyes, then we want the output to be a print of zip. And finally, if the user reply is no, we want, well, robots don't like you either, to be printed on the screen. So now we're going to move this last part up. Let's get rid of these spaces. And we need to make one more change. Well, robots don't like you either. That final else statement is going to be your human nonsense offends us. So we'll get rid of this, make that editing change. So what this final line is saying is that if somebody writes anything other than yes, no, maybe, or only ones with laser eyes, that we're still going to get a valid output. We're still going to get something in response. And that something should serve us well. Your human nonsense offends us. Okay, as before, let's go ahead and save this and then run it. So we're going to do File, Save. Now let's run the module to test it. Okay, so let's try no. Robots don't like us either. Okay, let's try maybe. Okay, make up your mind, human. That looks good. Okay, let's try something that was not listed as an option. So in response to, do you like robots? Let's say, huh? Okay, and then we get your human nonsense offends us. So it looks like this module ran successfully, and we're all done. To turn in my work then, I would simply do a final save of my work. I'm going to do a save as here, and I'm going to name this Run Robot. And I'm going to put my initials on it so that others will know that this module was created by me. And I'm going to click Save. That's it. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch.